Welcome to the 36th week of this year's In Times Like These recap. This week's recap contains scenes depicting use of disturbing gun violence. Viewer discretion is advised. Keith Burke apologizes to his father Finnegan after taking him down with a gun, then walks out of the door. Jeremiah and Shelley Raymond express their concerns about their son JJ being in a coma for a week. Jeremiah's father Raymond encourages them to remain faithful. Alan Russo meets with his older lover Dr. Terry Murphy at her apartment. Terry reminds Alan that his grandfather Lorenzo forbade him from seeing her again. Key arrives at the high school, ready to cause senseless devastation. Harley Drake walks into Finnegan's house, horrified as she sees her lover lifeless on the ground. Alan reassures Terry that he doesn't see her as a monster, even if Lorenzo never forgives her for her role in his parents' deaths. He admits to selfish actions in the past, but sees her act as selfless. Meanwhile, at the school, Yvette Mitchell warns Max Russo, Max's girlfriend Vanessa Dorval, and Vanessa's friend Yulissa Torres about Kiev's presence. Max confronts Kiev in the library, where Kiev accuses them all of being the real monsters, admits to pushing Vanessa's brother JJ off the Russo estate stair rail, and reveals that he harmed his father. Chaos ensues when Kiev attempts to harm everyone, and a school officer intervenes. Kiev is taken down, Max is wounded, and Yulissa tragically passes in her older sister Nachelle's arms. Raymond comforts Shelley and Jeremiah, urging them to pray for JJ to wake up and meet his new sibling, but he receives a frantic call from Vanessa about what occurred at the school. As Raymond stays JJ's side, quoting Psalm 23 in his native tongue, Haitian Creole, the news spreads, and loved ones rush to the school. Unfortunately, Pacho and Isabel receive news about what happened to Yulissa. Terry tells Alan that Lorenzo is hurt by the truth about his parents, but their conversation is interrupted when she gets news that Finnegan is in the hospital, and Alan learns that Kiev harmed Max. A shaken Vanessa reunites with her parents and reveals that Yulissa passed, with Jeremiah and Shelley comforting her with the fact that Yulissa is spending eternity with her Savior, Jesus Christ. Nachelle, Pacho, and Isabel mourn Yulissa together at the hospital. Yvette returns home after being questioned by the police but refuses to discuss the tragedy, leaving Udell and Wanda uncertain about how to help their daughter. Terry meets Harley and informs her that Finnegan is in critical condition, prompting Harley to question if Terry is happy about it. When a doctor offers Terry the chance to see Kiev, she declines and walks away. Vivian Jones stops by the hospital to see Max but is confronted by Clarice Rousseau, who demands to know why she's there. When Vivian states that Max is her nephew and wants to see how he is, Clarice tells Vivian that Max is nothing to Vivian. Vivian hints that Lorenzo might react differently if he knew she was his daughter. Clarice warns her not to use blackmail and insists she leave before Lorenzo sees her. Clarice's grandson Ben arrives and Vivian downplays the confrontation, though she admits Clarice still doesn't trust her. When Clarice walks off, Ben shares that his younger brother Max's condition is critical and reminds Vivian not to be hard on Clarice, as Max's situation brings back memories of Elvira. At the hospital, Jeremiah tells Shelley that Raymond is with JJ and Vanessa is with Max. Shelley reflects on how surreal the day feels, mourning Isabel's loss of her children while they still have theirs. Jeremiah reassures her that they shouldn't feel guilty, but Shelley is heartbroken over Yulissa's death and worried about telling JJ. Jeremiah comforts her, promising they'll get through it together. They then confront Harley, expressing regret over the situation. Later, in Max's room, Vanessa shares her feelings about the tragedy, just as Max opens his eyes. Isabel, Pacho, and Nachelle struggle to accept Yulissa's death and debate who should say goodbye first. Pacho goes first. Once he says his goodbye, he runs into his lover Vivian, who offers condolences to Pacho over Yulissa, and he tearfully embraces her. Nachelle says goodbye to her sister, and finally, Isabel says her goodbye to her youngest daughter Yulissa. In her office, Terry is confronted by Isidore, who angrily questions why she didn't prevent Kiev's violent actions. Terry defends herself, stating she had no idea Kiev would harm anyone, but Isidore criticizes her for allowing Kiev to live with Finnegan, who had access to a weapon. As the conversation escalates, Heidi and Gianni arrive, blaming Terry for not doing more to stop Kiev. accusing her of abandoning her son. Terry refuses to take responsibility, but Isidore implies that she shares some of the blame, referring to her helping his grandfather Dante take his own life. Before tensions rise further, Lorenzo enters and orders everyone to leave. Alone, Terry asks if Lorenzo blames her, and he responds that he does, telling her there's one way to make things better. Max awakens to the relief of his family, but his joy quickly turns to concern as he asks about Vanessa and Kiev. His parents assure him Vanessa is fine and try to avoid discussing Kiev. Frustrated, Max presses for details and learns that Kiev is in custody. Max's shock deepens when he discovers that his friend Ulisa didn't survive. Though his family urges him to rest, Max insists on seeing Vanessa. After a heartfelt exchange, Vanessa confirms Ulisa's death, and she comforts Max as they mourn their loss. Isidore visits Isabel at Theodosius' palace to offer condolences and check on her. Isabel shares that she had to say goodbye to her baby and is preparing for the burial. Isidore offers help, but Isabel assures him she can manage. But to Isidore's surprise, Isabel asked for a hug. Suddenly, they're interrupted by Pacho, who accuses Isidore of exploiting Isabel's grief. Isabel defends herself, but Pacho argues that Ulisa's death has made their family vulnerable, unlike the Russos who still have Max. Isabel breaks down in tears after Pacho storms off. Zeke leaves a message for Nachel after she doesn't answer his call. Quinlan advises Zeke to give Nachel space, but also reminds him of the trauma they witnessed. Though Zeke acknowledges Nachel's pain, he brushes off the impact, citing their past with violence. Quinlan pleads with him to open up, but Zeke insists he's being strong for Nachel. Frustrated, Quinlan calls Ben, who tells her Max is awake but upset about Ulisa, and encourages her to give Zeke time to process everything. Lorenzo demands that Terry leave Valley Park by the end of the week, blaming her for Kiev's actions and the death of his mother. Though shocked and explaining the difficulty, Terry reluctantly agrees to leave. Lorenzo makes it clear he wants her family gone, warning that if she doesn't go soon, she'll end up in prison. At a vigil outside the high school, Nachel rejects Vanessa's attempt to offer condolences, still bitter over past conflicts. Isabel apologizes on Nachel's behalf, but Shelley understands her grief. Zeke tries to comfort Nachel, but she remains distant, struggling to cope with Ulisa's death. Meanwhile, as Jeremiah sits beside JJ at the hospital, JJ begins to wake up. At the vigil, Wanda is angered by the sight of Owen, her former friend. She confronts him, questioning why he would attend, given the turmoil he caused in her family. Owen explains that he's there to offer condolences, but Wanda accuses him of disrespecting her by showing up at her daughter's school. When Owen asks about her family's absence, Wanda dismisses him, enraged by his suggestion that her husband, Udell, is too prideful to join her. She accuses Owen of being the real villain, not Udell. Tensions rise, but Wanda urges him to leave before she embarrasses them both. Owen apologizes and departs, acknowledging her disappointment in Udell. At the Russo estate, Alan confronts Lorenzo, defending his relationship with Terry. Lorenzo warns him that if Alan continues seeing her, she'll end up in prison. Alan tries to reason with his grandfather, expressing his love for Terry, but Lorenzo dismisses it as infatuation. He reveals that he wants Terry out of Valley Park by the end of the day, blaming her for Kiev's actions. Alan threatens to leave with her, but Lorenzo mocks him. After Alan storms off, Lorenzo blames Isidore for not imprisoning Terry earlier, suggesting Isabel's daughter might still be alive if he had. At the hospital, Harley finds Finnegan's room empty and panics, only to be confronted by Terry, who reveals that Finnegan has been moved to another facility but refuses to disclose the location. Frustrated, Harley slaps Terry, who slaps her back and coldly warns that if Finnegan never wakes up, Harley won't see him again. Terry explains she's making them both face responsibility for protecting Kiev, then leaves Harley in tears. He later visits Kiev, scolding him for his actions before telling him she's leaving Valley Park. As she prepares to leave, Alan arrives, offering to go with her. Can't get enough of the crazy world of In Times Like These? Then, treat yourself to a binge watch of In Times Like These. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. You're not ready for what's to come, but tune in anyway.